The Excelvar Empire had ruled the galaxy for centuries, crushing any species that dared to resist. Their fleets, vast and unstoppable, spread fear across every corner of space. When they declared war on humanity, the galactic community barely reacted. To them, Earth was just another weak civilization, a minor species that had only recently stepped into space. The war wouldn't last long. Some even placed bets on how many days it would take before humanity surrendered. But no one, not even the wisest scholars of the Galactic Council, could have predicted what was about to happen. The first Excelvar fleet, an armada of 100 warships, moved toward the human colony of Orion 7. They didn't bother sending a warning. There was no need. The protocol was simple: arrive, attack, and wipe out any resistance before claiming the planet as another victory for the Empire. As their fleet dropped out of hyperspace, the Excelvar commander, Lord Varkos, barely paid attention to the human defenses. His scanners picked up a few orbital defense stations and a single human warship standing in their way. He laughed. "Is this all they have?" he said to his crew. "One ship?" The Excelvar officers chuckled, knowing that their empire had crushed entire battle groups before. A lone human vessel was nothing. The human ship, identified as HSF Valiant, remained still, facing the massive Excelvar fleet. It was smaller than the enemy cruisers, sleek in design and heavily armored. But to the Excelvar, it was just a toy. Varkos ordered his fleet forward, preparing to fire. The destruction of Orion 7 would be quick, and the humans would learn their place. But before the Excelvar ships could unleash their barrage, something happened. A single transmission came through directly from the Valiant. It was a simple message, spoken in a calm, unwavering voice. "This is Captain Elias Rourke of the HSF Valiant. Turn back now. This is your only warning." Silence followed. The Excelvar officers looked at each other before laughing again. Was this some kind of joke? A warning? From a single human warship? Varkos sneered and gave the order to fire. But they never got the chance. Before the Excelvar weapons could power up, the Valiant moved. It wasn't normal movement, not the slow, predictable acceleration of standard starships. It vanished in a blur, almost as if space itself had folded around it. One moment, it was in front of the Excelvar fleet. The next, it was inside their formation. A split second later, hell was unleashed. The first Excelvar warship exploded before anyone could react. The Valiant's weapons tore through its shields as if they didn't exist. Energy beams, precise and devastating, punched through armor and ignited the core. The Excelvar fleet, which had never known fear, suddenly found themselves under attack by something they couldn't understand. The human ship moved like nothing the Excelvar had ever seen. It danced through their formation, dodging incoming fire with impossible speed. Each shot it fired was a kill, one after another. Excelvar warships turned into fireballs, their crews barely having time to scream. The Excelvar officers panicked. How was this possible? How could a single ship destroy them so effortlessly? They scrambled to react, but the Valiant was too fast, too precise, and too deadly. Lord Varkos watched in horror as his fleet was systematically dismantled. In less than 3 minutes, half of his ships were gone. He couldn't believe it. This wasn't war. This was a massacre. The Galactic Council had said humans were weak, primitive. But the Valiant fought with a level of technology and strategy that no one had ever seen before. It was as if humanity had been waiting for this moment, preparing for war while the rest of the galaxy underestimated them. "Send reinforcements." Varkos shouted, his voice shaking. His officers scrambled to obey, calling for nearby fleets to rush in. But before they could finish, the Valiant appeared right in front of his flagship. The Excelvar warlord's breath caught in his throat. He could see the human ship through the viewport, sleek, dark, and glowing with energy. And then, for the first time in his life, he felt fear. A final transmission came through. This time, Captain Rourke's voice was colder. "I warned you." The Valiant's main cannon fired. A beam of white-hot energy sliced through the Excelvar flagship like a knife through paper. Varkos didn't even have time to scream. The ship detonated instantly, taking the warlord and his command crew with it. The remaining Excelver ships tried to flee, but the Valiant hunted them down, one by one, until there was nothing left. The first battle of the war had lasted 7 minutes, and humanity had won. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The Galactic Council, which had expected a swift Excelver victory, now watched in stunned silence. The invincible Empire had just suffered a crushing defeat by a single human warship. Humanity was not weak. They were not prey. They were something else entirely. And this war was just beginning. The galaxy was still struggling to understand what had happened at Orion 7. The mighty Excelvar Empire had lost an entire fleet, wiped out by a single human warship in less than 7 minutes. Panic spread through the Galactic Council, and for the first time in centuries, the Excelvar leadership tasted fear. They had assumed humanity was weak, primitive, and unprepared for war. But the destruction of their fleet had proven otherwise. Humanity had power, a terrifying, unknown power. The Excelvar Emperor, Dravzul, furious and humiliated, declared total war. No longer would they treat humans as insignificant. They would unleash their full military might and erase Earth from existence. Massive Excelvar fleets began their march across human-controlled space. Thousands of warships, heavily armed and battle-hardened, moved toward key human colonies. The Galactic Council watched, expecting humanity to finally break. No civilization had ever survived a full-scale Excelvar invasion. The sheer number of ships, soldiers, and weapons would be overwhelming. The war should have ended quickly, but something was wrong. Reports began coming in Excelvar, fleets were disappearing. Not retreating. Not destroyed in battle. Simply vanishing. Entire armadas would enter human space, only to be never heard from again. The few survivors who managed to escape returned in a state of terror, their minds shattered, muttering about ghost ships, invisible weapons, and impossible horrors. One such survivor, Commander Valax, was brought before the Excelvar High Command. His ship had been part of a fleet of 300 warships sent to destroy a human outpost on Delta Prime. He was the only one who had returned. His body trembled as he spoke. They were waiting for us. Not with ships. Not with weapons. With something else. The Excelvar generals pressed him for answers, but his words made no sense. They knew every move we would make. They were already inside our systems, inside our ships. We fired at empty space, but the attacks came from nowhere. We were fighting ghosts. Before they could get more out of him, he collapsed, screaming, clutching his head as if something unseen was tearing into his mind. Moments later, he died, his brain burned from the inside. The Excelvar were no strangers to war. They had fought thousands of battles across the galaxy. But this was something new. Humanity wasn't just fighting with weapons. They were playing a different kind of war. The Excelvar fleets kept advancing, but the moment they entered human-controlled space, they vanished. No wreckage, no distress signals, just silence. The Galactic Council grew restless. How was this possible? The humans were too young a species to possess such power. What were they hiding? Then came the message. A single broadcast, sent to every major power in the galaxy. A human face appeared on every screen, calm and composed. It was Captain Elias Rourke, the same man who had destroyed the Excelvar fleet at Orion 7. His voice was steady, but his words sent a chill through the universe. You wanted to know our secret. You wanted to understand how humanity fights. Let me tell you, you were never fighting our ships. You were fighting our minds. At first, no one understood. Then the truth began to unravel. Humanity had developed something far more dangerous than warships and weapons. They had unlocked the power of quantum warfare. Their ships didn't just move fast, they existed in multiple places at once. Their weapons didn't just fire, they predicted exactly where to strike before the enemy even moved. Their technology didn't just disrupt communications, it rewrote reality itself. The Excelvar fleets hadn't vanished. They had been erased. Panic swept through the Excelvar Empire. Their greatest generals were called back to devise a counterattack, but there was no strategy against an enemy that could see every move before it was made. Zelver scientists worked desperately to understand human technology, but it was like trying to grasp a shadow every time they thought they had an answer. It changed. The Galactic Council, once eager to see the war, now feared they had unleashed something unstoppable. For the first time in history, the greatest empire in the galaxy was losing. The Excelver made one final attempt. They gathered their entire remaining fleet, over 10,000 warships, and launched a direct assault on Earth itself. This was no longer about victory. It was about survival. If humanity was allowed to continue, the Excelver knew that their empire, their entire civilization, would be destroyed. The attack force moved through space, approaching Earth's defenses. They expected resistance. They expected human warships. But they found nothing. No fleets, no weapons, no defense systems. Just silence. And then, one by one, their ships started shutting down. First, their shields collapsed. Then, their weapons. Their engines died. Crews screamed as their systems failed, leaving them adrift in the darkness of space. And then, the voices began. Whispers in their minds. Visions of their worst fears. Some tried to fight, others tried to run. None of them escaped. The mighty fleet of the Excelver Empire, their last hope, was reduced to nothing. Back on Earth, Captain Elias Rourke stood in a silent command center, watching the final moments of the war unfold. The battle had ended before it even began. The humans had never needed a fleet. They had already won before the first shot was fired. The war was over. Across the galaxy, the message was clear. Humanity was not to be challenged. The Galactic Council, once so eager to see Earth fall, now feared the very mention of its name. The Excelver Empire, once the most powerful force in the universe, was no more. And the galaxy finally understood the truth. Humanity had never been weak. They had only been waiting for the right moment to reveal their true power. The galaxy had always believed in rules of war, rules of strategy, rules of survival. Every empire, every species, every civilization followed them. The Excelvar, the most powerful force in known space, had spent centuries perfecting these rules, crushing all who stood against them. But now those rules had been shattered. Humanity had done the unthinkable. The war should have ended in days. Instead, the Excelver fleets were in ruins, their armies broken, their empire on the edge of collapse. And the worst part? They still didn't understand how humanity was winning. The Excelvar High Command gathered in desperation, their warlords and strategists locked in fierce debate. They had thrown everything at Earth's forces' armies, warships, weapons designed to destroy planets. Nothing worked. Every attack failed before it even started. Human ships moved too fast, human defenses adapted too quickly, and every Excelver fleet that entered human space was wiped out with impossible efficiency. Their greatest minds analyzed battle footage, desperate for answers, but all they saw was chaos. Human ships didn't follow conventional strategies. They attacked from angles that should have been impossible. They dodged fire before it was even aimed. The Excelver were no longer fighting an enemy. They were fighting something beyond their understanding. Then, a new report arrived. A single word repeated across intercepted human transmissions. A name. A whisper of something far worse than anything the galaxy had ever faced. Project Revenant. The Excelver Emperor, Dravzul, demanded answers. Their spies worked relentlessly, infiltrating human networks, interrogating prisoners, hacking into military systems. And finally, after weeks of searching, they uncovered the truth. Humanity's secret weapon wasn't a fleet. It wasn't a superweapon. It wasn't an advanced AI. It was something no species had ever dared to create. The Excelver watched in horror as the stolen data revealed Project Revenant. A weapon that shouldn't exist. A weapon that defied reality itself. It was not made of metal or energy. It was not piloted by humans. It was something else entirely. A creation of science and madness, of physics and nightmare. A ship that wasn't just built, it was grown. It wasn't controlled. It was alive. Revenant was not a battleship. It was an evolution, a human-made life form that had no limits, no weaknesses. A being of war and destruction, designed not to fight but to consume. Every Excelver ship it touched became part of it. Every weapon fired against it was absorbed. It didn't dodge attacks, it let them hit, only to grow stronger. It learned, adapted, evolved. The more the Excelver fought, the more powerful it became. And the worst part? It never stopped hunting. The Excelver fleet, the last great force of their empire, was sent to stop Revenant. 1,000 warships. The greatest weapons the galaxy had ever built. The fleet moved with precision, deploying in tight formations, shields overlapping, energy cannons primed to fire. They had prepared for everything, but nothing could prepare them for what they saw. Revenant did not arrive like a fleet. It did not exit hyperspace like a normal ship. It unfolded. One moment, space was empty. The next, it was there. A shape so massive, it defied understanding, its black surface shifting, pulsing, like a living thing. The Excelver warlords felt fear for the first time in their lives. They opened fire immediately, unleashing everything. Plasma beams, torpedoes, hyperkinetic cannons. The firepower was enough to reduce planets to dust. But Revenant did not fall. It absorbed the energy, its surface rippling as if tasting the attacks. Then, without warning, it moved. It was too fast. Too precise. It didn't just evade, it was already inside the Excelver formation before they could react. And then, the nightmare began. Revenant touched the first Excelver ship. A massive battlecruiser, shields at full power. The moment its hull made contact, the ship melted. Not destroyed, not torn apart, consumed. Its metal twisted, its energy drained, its crew screaming as their minds were pulled into the abyss. And then the ship was gone. Revenant grew larger. Panic broke out in the fleet. Ships turned to run, but it was useless. Revenant didn't chase them. It was already there. Every ship that tried to flee vanished. The Excelver warlords screamed for reinforcements, but no one answered. There was no one left to answer. The fleet was being devoured. The last ship, the Emperor's personal dreadnought, attempted a final desperate act. A weapon never before used a planet-killer cannon capable of wiping out entire worlds in a single shot. It charged, glowing with the energy of a dying star. The Emperor watched as the weapon locked onto Revenant. This was it. The last hope. Fire. The shot hit. A beam of destruction, tearing through space itself, struck Revenant directly in its core. For a moment, everything went silent. The Excelver dared to hope. Had they done it? Had they finally destroyed the impossible? Then, the darkness stirred. The wound closed. The energy was consumed. And Revenant spoke. Not with words. Not with sound. But directly into the minds of every Excelver in the fleet. Thank you for the gift. And then, the last ship of the Excelver Empire was gone. The galaxy fell into silence. The war was over. Not because humanity had conquered the Excelver, but because there was nothing left to conquer. Revenant had erased them. Every fleet. Every planet. Every trace. The greatest empire in history was now just a memory. And humanity? They simply watched. They had never wanted war. But when war had come, they had done what no species had ever done before. They had rewritten the rules of reality. The Galactic Council, now leaderless, now terrified, sent a final message to Earth. What do you want? And humanity's response came clear and final. Just remember, never make us do this again. The war had reached its breaking point. The Excelver Empire, once the most feared power in the galaxy, had been reduced to a shadow of its former self. Fleet after fleet had vanished, their warships crushed, their colonies wiped from existence. Their enemies had not been the humans they once mocked, they had been something far worse. Humanity had unleashed weapons that should not exist, ships that defied logic and strategies that made no sense. Now, as the last remnants of the Exilver forces gathered above their homeworld, the truth was undeniable. They were losing, and nothing could stop it. The Exilver Emperor, Dravzul, stood in the war chamber, staring at the holographic display of the battlefield. The last battle. Every remaining warship in the Empire, over 15,000 vessels, had been called back to defend their capital. If they failed here, the Empire would be no more. The enemy was approaching. The humans, or at least what they had become. The Emperor had sent spies, infiltrators, anything to uncover the truth about Earth's impossible war machine. And the reports had been terrifying. Humanity had changed. They no longer fought like other species. They no longer built their ships like other civilizations. Their technology had evolved beyond understanding. The war had not just been a test of strength. It had been a test of perception. The Exilver had relied on numbers, weapons, and strategy. But the humans had mastered something else, something that could not be stopped. The enemy fleet arrived. The Exilver generals stood frozen as the sensors detected nothing. No ships. No formations. Just an emptiness that stretched across the battlefield. And then shadows moved. From the void, human warships emerged, but not in any way the Exilver expected. Their forms shifted black, shifting metal that flowed like liquid yet struck like steel. Their ships didn't warp in, they simply appeared where they needed to be, ignoring the laws of time and space. Panic spread among the Exilver forces. Their gunners tried to lock onto targets, but the ships weren't there. Every time they fired, the enemy had already moved. Every missile, every energy blast, every attack hit nothing. The humans were everywhere and nowhere. The Exilver commanders screamed for countermeasures, but the battle was already lost. One by one, their warships began to fall. Not from enemy fire, but from within. Crews screamed as their ships turned against them, their systems hijacked, their defenses disabled. Some ships simply went dark, as if their very power had been stolen. Others turned on their own allies, their crews unable to stop their own weapons from firing. And then, the human flagship arrived. A single warship, larger than anything the Exilver had ever seen. It should not exist. Its design was unnatural, its surface shifting and pulsing, as if it were alive. And then, a voice echoed through every ship, every station, every soldier's mind. This war is over. The voice was calm, cold. It was not a demand. It was not a warning. It was a statement of fact. The Exilver fought back with everything they had. Every weapon, every last soldier, every ounce of power. But the humans did not break. They did not even slow down. The Exilver dreadnoughts, each powerful enough to destroy planets, were torn apart like paper. Their soldiers, trained for centuries of war, were helpless against the enemy that could not be touched. And then the Emperor saw it. The human fleet was not fighting to win. They were not fighting for conquest. They were ending something. Every Exilver ship that fell did not explode. It simply ceased to exist. Every trace of it, its metal, its data, its crew erased. It was not destruction. It was annihilation. The Emperor realized the truth too late. This was not a battle. It was a purge. As the Exilver homeworld's defenses collapsed, the last warships of the Empire were consumed by the abyss. The capital city burned. The screams of its people filled the air as the impossible weapons of humanity rewrote reality itself. The planet trembled, as if the universe itself was rejecting its existence. The Emperor, the last ruler of the once great Exilver Empire, fell to his knees, watching as his world was engulfed in darkness. And then silence. When the Galactic Council received the final transmission, they expected demands. They expected Earth to claim dominance, to demand surrender, to reshape the galaxy in its image. But the humans sent only a single message. It is done. No threats. No conditions. No further war. The Exilver Empire was simply gone. Not conquered, not enslaved, erased from existence. Their planets, their ships, their history, their very name vanished, as if they had never existed. The galaxy trembled. The other empires, once so eager to watch the humans fall, now stood in absolute terror. For the first time in history, the greatest powers of the universe agreed on one thing: never challenge Earth. The war had ended. Humanity had not just won. They had changed the fate of the galaxy forever. The war was over. The Excelver Empire, once the most feared force in the galaxy, had been wiped from existence. Their fleets, their cities, their very name gone, as if they had never been. The galaxy stood in stunned silence, trying to comprehend what had happened. For centuries, wars had been fought with clear winners and losers. Empires rose and fell, but remnants always remained survivors, refugees, something left behind. But this time, there was nothing. No distress signals. No escape pods. No desperate remnants trying to rebuild. Humanity had not just defeated the Excelver. They had erased them. The Galactic Council gathered in urgency, their chambers filled with uneasy murmurs. Every ambassador, every ruler, every strategist sat frozen, watching the reports with hollow eyes. Every attempt to locate any remaining Excelver presence had failed. Their planets were lifeless, their space now a vast, empty void. Not even debris remained. It was as if the Excelver had been removed from time itself, and the ones responsible were silent. Earth had not declared victory. No speeches, no celebrations, no demands. Nothing. The humans had simply finished the war and returned to their world. Their fleets had vanished from the battlefield, their leaders refusing to answer any transmissions. The galaxy expected a conqueror, a new ruler, to emerge from the ashes of war. But humanity had no interest in ruling. They had only sent one message: we do not seek war. But if war seeks us, we will end it. Entirely. The warning was clear. And terrifying. The other empires met in secret, debating their next move. Some whispered of an alliance, a desperate effort to counter Earth's newfound power. But fear overruled ambition. No one dared to provoke them now. Even the oldest empires, ones that had existed for thousands of years, chose silence. They had seen what humanity was capable of. They had watched them break every rule of war, every limit of technology, every expectation of reality. They had witnessed the impossible. And so, for the first time in history, the galaxy stopped fighting. With the Excelver gone, power was left unclaimed. Once, such a vacuum would have led to bloodshed, as rival empires fought to expand their borders. But now, no one moved. No one dared. Everyone waited, watching Earth, expecting them to step forward and take control. But weeks passed, then months, and humanity made no such move. They remained in their own space, watching, waiting, but something had changed. Across the galaxy, whispers of humanity spread. Their name was spoken with both fear and reverence. Before, they had been dismissed as a young race, an upstart civilization barely worth noticing. Now, they were a force that no one would ever challenge again. Even the most aggressive warlords, the same ones who had once mocked Earth as weak, fell silent. The universe had new rulers. Not by force, not by conquest, but by sheer, undeniable reality. No one would ever fight humanity again, because no one wanted to know what would happen if they did. And so, a new galactic order was born. Not through treaties, not through diplomacy, but through fear. The great empires that had once fought for dominance now turned inward, their leaders cautious, their militaries hesitant. War itself, the endless cycle of conflict that had shaped the galaxy for millennia, had come to an unnatural halt. Humanity had achieved something no civilization had ever done before. They had ended war itself. But deep within the shadows of the universe, far from the reach of any empire, another force watched. Something ancient. Something patient. Something that had been waiting for the chaos to end. And now that humanity had rewritten the rules of war, it was time for them to step forward.